my question is to you to say more about the ability of society to make myths, to believe in them, and to repeat them, and not to look for the truth.
Well, the question was, is it a myth that 50,000 Jews haven't been deported from Bulgaria? And I say we have to be careful with the word myth. It's not a myth, it's a fact. Now, we have to interpret and to understand how it has been possible. And how it has been possible, and then you start to think about why have the Jews not been deported? And you start to question. And if you say it is a king because you love the king and you have big hopes in the king, like it was a case when I did my interviews in Bulgaria in the summer '91, you create a myth because you have no documents.
Why we did that?
Well, I think I tried to show yesterday, to explain that each period after the turn, after the collapse of the regime, of the communist regime, each period created its myth. Before, 20 years after, we have a consensus, I think, even if we have divergences, but there is a consensus that was a conjunction of goodwill or different factors. Okay, and then you can evaluate: did the king really do something? The role of the church, was it decisive, or was it the role of Peshev was decisive, or was it because the people of Bulgaria, the Bulgarians are more tolerant than any other people? Things like that. But you create myth because you want. It's more belief than
it's more,
study.
It's more optimistic.
Well, I think nations like myths, because it's easier to understand. It's a difficult question. Why were the Jews saved? Okay, it's a difficult question. Now we have the answer, many answers. But, well, at the beginning, the first reaction was to say the communists had created a myth. As I said yesterday, they did such a poor propaganda, only in the 80s, not before. They made such a poor propaganda that people started to believe they didn't take part to the rescue of the Jews. And I tried to explain yesterday that, of course, the communists surely we have documents, we have evidence of it. They took part of the rescue of Jews, because in the Marxist ideology there is no they don't praise, it doesn't praise xenophobia and anti-Semitism, never. So it was just normal, according to the ideology of the communist Marxist ideology. It was normal to be against anti-Semitism, and probably partisans have taken part to this rescue. But it was a side effect of this trivial propaganda, communist propaganda. So we forgot about, after the turn, you didn't want any more to know about them, which was a mistake. And according to me, if you don't say that, if you don't mention the Jews anymore among the people who we fought against the deportation, well, you are doing the same thing like the communist regime did before, yes. Not to say the truth.
Yes. So where do you think must start this fight with myths? At what level? When? How can we be sure we are prepared to fight our myths?
Well, it's a task of the historians to destroy myths.
but they do build them in Bulgaria?
Well, you put the finger on a very interesting question. Do historians, I mean, professional historians, not official, it's something else, professional historians, do they create myths? It can happen, yes. It happens because, especially in contemporary history, you know, the border between politics and history and writing of history is very thin. And historians are like other citizens. They have their own opinion. When I say that in Bulgaria after the collapse of the communism, when I say that there was a myth about the king, it didn't come from historians. I don't remember, but probably they didn't fight against it. I don't know, but that was what the society wanted to hear. A myth is something the society wants to hear. And it's when we say Bulgaria saved the Jews, it's a beautiful story.
I can tell you something as a witness, no matter how young I am, I do remember. Actually, that myth of Bulgarian saving the Jews was absolutely given at once. I've never known that, and I've never had the need to know it. Suddenly, after the 90s, somebody suddenly said it like in a very rapid and immediate way, and we started living with this new truth. We didn't know it before. We didn't need it before. They just
Yes, I understand, because at that moment, after post-communist Bulgaria needed to create a new identity, national identity.
That's it.
And myths are short stories, very easy to understand for people. If you try to understand to people, look, okay, the Jews haven't been deported, but don't forget, I mean, Bulgaria deported the Jews from Macedonia and Thrace. And then, listen, the king doesn't really wanted to save the Jews. There are no documents about it. Just he had to resist to the orders of Germany for some reasons. And then look, the church, but not the whole church. There were two people among the church, you know. And then Peshev. Yes, but Peshev was not the only one. And also the Jews wanted to defend themselves, which is true. In Bulgaria, the Jews built a lobby and went to see Peshev. What didn't happen in France, for instance. So that's something interesting to see how the Jews in Bulgaria decided that, they wanted to defend themselves. That's maybe the most interesting thing.
Actually, nobody said that, but we don't have time. I mean, it's great that okay, we're speaking about Bulgarian society, such and such, but we must speak about Jewish society, and that time obviously it was different, and this difference is absolutely interesting and a matter of research.
Yes.
And you do say it is true that there is something very special about that community which made everything possible to save itself, and not everything yet.
Yes, that's true. But you know, the problem with history is that you never know the future of the past. You rewrite all the time. History is a work in progress. There are some facts, historical facts, that you can't revisit. It has been established 5.2 million of Jews have been killed. Okay, it's a historical fact. Nobody can deny it. Okay, good. But there's, I would say, big historical facts. But since the behavior of a society is concerned, it's very, very difficult, because you have no documents. You have only collective memory, which is, for me as a historian, for our history, it's reliable, but not reliable on facts. It's reliable for other things which are very important for me, for atmosphere, feelings, and so on.
But
and
they're
so on.
not.
Yes, and that's a problem. But you don't have documents unless you have a political police. That's why, no, but we don't wish to have one. Yeah. But sure, if you work on as I did, on the documents, files of the Stasi, well,
sorry.
It's
excellent. Thank you very much. I just want some opinion. It's not. I don't like this word opinion because of the danger in it. But what said yesterday your friend Bulgarian Liliana about the new anti-Semitism? Do you agree with that? It's like if there is some anti-Semitism now in Bulgaria.
In Bulgaria,
is it the one before? Is it changing? Is it something else?
No, I'm sorry. I just don't know enough.
Okay, for France.
A new anti-Semitism in France, a feeling against Jews, which.
This is, as she said, this is just a anti-speaking, not particularly Muslims, Jews, no matter what. Is it something very special for this time, or it's like?
Well, I tell you something. I'm not a friend of Israel's policy, not at all, but I can notice sometimes among French intellectuals that the way they attack Israel is suspicious. But
even this is myth.
Bhagwan?
Even the big mistakes of Israel sometimes may be a myth.
No, I wouldn't say that. No, it's very complicated. You know, I repeat what I said. Sometimes I am suspicious. I do understand criticism against Israel's policy. Yes. It's not a problem. But sometimes, not very often, sometimes, yes, it happens that people are suspicious because they make no difference between the government and the society. That's important. Although that's true that you don't see a lot of dissidents in Israeli society, but I know there is one, and
you must look for them before stating.
When you are in the country, you can. Yes, you can. No,
so
doubt.
It's very easy to criticize being away.
Yes, you have what's his name of a philosopher or a historian who wrote about the myth of the Jewish people. He teaches. His book was translated. What's his name? He's a famous historian in Israel. He wrote a book about the myth of the nation, and some people do exist in Israel. They do. So, well, that's why I say sometimes I'm surprised by the way how people attack Israel, even if I do agree against the politics of Israel. Well, it's a complicated story. Maybe it's too far from Bulgaria. As far as Bulgaria is concerned, I have no idea. I have only, friends.
Of what you're saying, like maybe this anti-Semitism now is actually anti-Israelism. Not it's anti-government of Israel, not this nation.
No. Well, I wouldn't say that. I don't know. A communist country sometimes created a new anti-Semitism in society while they were attacking Israel all the time for good or bad reasons. And I noticed that in Eastern Germany, sometimes people allow themselves to say things against Jews and not against Israelis because of the propaganda of the communist regime. Yeah, that's another case.